terrified that my 25F husband, 28M, has been having stuff with me while I'm asleep. Now I'm pregnant. I want to share a deeply personal experience that has turned my life upside down. It all started when I received a diagnosis for a serious medical condition that required me to take heavy medication. In fact, it often knocks me out for long periods, leaving me completely unaware of my surroundings. However, with my condition and the medication, it has become a considerable strain on our marriage. I often feel like a terrible wife for not being able to engage in intimacy, and I miss the connection we once had. To give you an idea of how deeply this medication affects me, I could be in a room with a blaring fire alarm, and I wouldn't wake up. Recently, I started feeling worse than usual. I was dizzy and uncomfortable, which prompted me to visit my doctor, fearing I might have contracted COVID-19. To my surprise, I found out I was pregnant, 5 weeks along. The catch? I was in shock. I hadn't cheated, nor had I been assaulted in any way that I knew of. This wasn't some miraculous conception. It was a medical anomaly. When I shared the news with my husband, he was surprised, but quickly shifted to excitement. I felt a wave of relief wash over me that he didn't accuse me of infidelity. However, as the days passed, I began to reflect on our past conversations. At the time, I brushed it off as playful banter, but now those jokes haunted me. I started recalling moments when I would wake up feeling uncomfortable, experiencing pelvic pressure that I usually associate with intimacy. My husband has a rough style in bed, which I've always enjoyed, but now I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I confronted him about my fears, expressing my concern that he might have taken advantage of me while I was asleep. While it's true that my medication can affect my memory, I distinctly remember the last time we were intimate. I don't want to panic or convince myself of something that could destroy our marriage, but the fear gnaws at me. If my suspicions are true, I don't know how I would cope with that reality. Despite the turmoil, I was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a mother, something I had feared might never happen due to my health issues. But now, I was left grappling with the possibility that this miracle baby could be the result of something sinister. I reached out to the online community for advice, and the responses were overwhelming. Many expressed concern about the implications of my husband's past jokes and the severity of my medication's effects. I took their advice to heart, realizing that I needed to gather more information and resources to navigate this situation. I asked him directly if I had ever instigated anything in my sleep. And he assured me that we had never engaged in any intimate acts without my full awareness. As I move forward, I know I want to keep the baby, regardless of the circumstances surrounding its conception. I'm still processing everything, and I appreciate the support and opinions I've received. They mean the world to me. If there's interest, I'll share updates as I figure out my next steps in this complex situation. Thank you for listening to my story. I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this. My husband and I were excited to start a family, but things took a turn that left me feeling terrified and confused. I'm 25 years old, and my husband is 28. We had been trying to conceive, but I was on medication that made me feel foggy and exhausted. When I did agree to intimate moments with my husband, it felt more like a chore than an enjoyable experience. Then I found out I was pregnant. It was a moment filled with mixed emotions. I had taken a COVID test initially because I was feeling unwell, but my doctor confirmed the pregnancy through blood tests and an ultrasound. As I processed the news, a chilling thought crept into my mind. What if my husband had been intimate with me while I was asleep? My medication knocked me out completely, leaving me in a deep sleep without any awareness of what was happening around me. I started to question everything. My husband had always been honest with me, and when he looked me in the eye and said we had conceived the baby together, I wanted to believe him. But the timeline didn't add up. My doctor had given me a due date that seemed to contradict my last memory of intimacy with him. I was terrified that I might be losing my grip on reality, or that my husband was hiding something from me. As I shared my concerns online, I received a flood of support and advice. Some commenters suggested I consider the possibility of being gaslighted, while others urged me to trust my instincts. Yet the thought that my husband could be deceiving me was too much to bear. I had never doubted his integrity before, but now I was left questioning everything. In the days that followed, I became increasingly anxious. I needed clarity, and I needed it fast. My husband, meanwhile, was acting concerned, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing my mind. I also began to reflect on my husband's meticulous nature. He always cleaned up after intimate moments, often spending more time tidying up than we did being together. It seemed absurd to think he could be doing this to cover up something sinister, but the thought lingered in my mind. 2 weeks later, after a whirlwind of emotions and countless sleepless nights, I decided to visit the hospital to speak with my doctor again. I needed answers. I needed to know if my medication could really affect my memory and behavior in such a drastic way. I was desperate to regain control over my life and my thoughts. As I navigated this tumultuous journey, I realized that I had to trust myself. I had to confront my fears and seek the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With the support of those who reached out to me online, I began to piece together my reality, determined to protect my future and my unborn child. This experience has been a roller coaster of emotions, and while I still have questions, I know that I am not alone in this struggle. I will continue to seek the truth, for myself and for my baby, and I hope to find clarity in this chaotic situation. I never imagined I would find myself in such a bewildering situation. It all started when I began to question my reality, wondering if I was losing my mind. I was pregnant, but the circumstances surrounding it felt so confusing that I couldn't help but feel terrified. My husband and I had been intimate, but I had this nagging fear that something more sinister was happening while I slept. After consulting with my doctor, I learned that the medication I was taking didn't cause memory loss or any possibility of sleep-related issues. This was a relief, yet it left me grappling with my thoughts. I had never woken up with any signs that something inappropriate had occurred, and I often slept in just my underwear. The physical sensations I was experiencing, like pelvic pressure, could easily be attributed to my pregnancy. The bruises? They were a mystery, but I reminded myself that people often bruise without knowing how it happened. In the midst of this turmoil, I sought help from a counselor, hoping to find clarity. The accusations I had thrown at my husband had created a chasm between us. I felt humiliated and embarrassed, spending days locked away in our bedroom, avoiding him as much as possible. Our conversations dwindled to discussions about the baby, and I began to sense that our relationship was on the brink of collapse. Then came the day of my ultrasound. I was eager to confirm the pregnancy timeline, hoping it would ease my mind. To my shock, the doctor informed me that I was further along than I had initially thought. The baby was conceived on a night I distinctly remembered being intimate with my husband. We had never used protection, as he preferred not to, and I had been led to believe that the chances of conception were slim. Feeling even more embarrassed, I confronted my husband about the situation. We had a brief moment of connection while watching a movie, but it quickly spiraled into a heated argument. He asked me if I truly believed he could have assaulted me, and when I started to cry, he responded with laughter, making a cruel joke about my health. I was devastated. As our argument escalated, he revealed that he had attempted to touch me while I was asleep, insisting that it wasn't assault because we were married. He claimed he had only tried to engage with me in that way out of desperation. My heart sank as he admitted to using my hand to satisfy himself while I slept. The revelation was shocking and left me feeling utterly lost. I was grappling with the idea that while I had consented to intimacy, there were actions taken without my awareness that felt deeply wrong. My husband's belief that these actions were acceptable because of our marriage left me questioning everything. I felt isolated, with no family to turn to, and only a few friends who I couldn't impose upon during such a difficult time. In the days that followed, we slept in separate rooms, and I lay awake, terrified of what the future held. The weight of it all felt crushing. I was scared to leave, but staying felt equally foolish. My husband was angry at me for my accusations, and I was left feeling like I had no one to rely on. Despite everything, I wanted to express my gratitude to those who had reached out to me online. Even if they didn't know me personally, their concern made me feel less alone in this overwhelming situation. I was determined to find a way forward, even if I was still unsure of what that path looked like. As I reflected on everything, I realized that I had to prioritize my well-being and the well-being of my unborn child. I didn't know what the future held, but I was committed to finding a way to navigate this challenging chapter of my life.